everyone. This is episode 29 of High Fantasy, member of the Broken Jars Network.
We're almost to 30.
Yeah.
Yay.
Nice.
Has anyone been productive since 28?
Since 28. That was
Yeah, the last episode.
2 weeks ago. Actually, 2 weeks ago.
Actually, 2 weeks ago. I was about to say, was that actually? Yes. I didn't get a lot done this week, but last week I got a fair amount done. So
I've thought a lot.
I rewrote the first 2,000 words to something and got my art done for reservation, so the novella will have some art. That's cool.
I thought about starting to work on things, and I remembered all my problems and got discouraged for days on end.
That's the worst. You're just fuck.
It's I really want to do something and be productive. Which part will I start on? Nothing, because everything is a problem.
Sometimes it just helps to find any moment that you think you have and just write something.
I'm still stuck on the planning. On every single thing I could think of. It's just fuck, I need to figure that out too.
Yeah, I've been trying to think of new story ideas because I've been kind of rotating around the same couple for a long time now, so I want to get my mind onto something new. So I'm not sure where I want to go, what I want to do. I had an idea a long time ago that I never did anything with because I didn't think I could do it, but it was to basically write a 1984 book, except or Star Wars book, from the side of Big Brother or the Empire, where they think they're the good guys, but through the story you reveal that they're actually the bad guys. But it would be hard to do without actually coming out and saying it. You'd have to be really passive. So I don't know how that would work exactly.
Yeah, but it does seem to be kind of tricky, and you'd have to be able to execute something pretty fine.
Are they going to be doing villainy things the whole time?
I think you would probably allude to the villainy things, but it's the people over there, they're evil because they do X, Y, and Z, and we're good because we do A, B, C, or whatever. But the more those things get revealed, the more you realize that those people over there are actually the people, the rebels who are trying to overthrow the terrorists have a point, essentially.
I mean, that could work.
Yeah.
Anything can work.
Yes,
it's
true.
Just I mean, I might have the ability to do it now, but when I had this idea, it was 7, 8 years ago. Maybe longer, so I was definitely don't have the ability now when I first had the idea.
Well, I think we're avoiding our topic like we did last time when we were trying to get to it, but the middle of writing things and books in general.
The part where you've already hooked your reader, and now you've got to keep him entertained until you get to the end that he wants to see.
Yeah. The part where if you know the beginning and you know the end, you need to somehow bridge between them, and that's when you're going to have a lot of plot holes or risks of plot holes and the kind of what now.
Mm-hmm. You got to make the character grow because she has to learn something, or gain the ability to beat the big bad, whatever that big bad might be. And you also got to do some world building, character building, or the characters are going to feel hollow. There's a lot going on in those middle 30,000 words.
A few try-fail cycles in there. And
yeah. I'm terrible at it. I'm
getting to
the point where I can do some openings, where I can just be all right, here we go. 10, 15,000 words, not too hard for the opening. write the ending, not too bad. But getting through the middle is tough. And that's where we are in Andromeda's Love. And like we've been stuck at like 37,000 words for like 2 months.
Yeah, at this point, I won't start writing until I have my outline figured out enough because I can write the opening 10,000 words fine, and then I hit my problems and I can't get around those problems. So it's like I'm spending a lot of time figuring out the middle and the
Sometimes it
outline
helps
even.
to have written it, though.
Maybe it just kind of seems like a risk in terms of how I feel about it, because if I write the 10,000 words and I stop, I'm probably going to stop for a lot longer than if I can just figure out the outline and then I can write 30,000 words,
I mean,
probably.
sometimes those questions, I don't know if you're spontaneous when you're writing as I am, but sometimes the scene kind of just organically flows in a different direction than I was expecting. And I'm like, okay, well, if that's where this is going, then it answers the questions I had already because I just started writing and it developed in a certain way.
I'm less spontaneous because I want things to go in the way I originally want it to. I don't want it to veer off and I get something completely different. So I make sure I plan
Director
things
Alex
and I
is
stick
the
to it.
ultimate planner here. I mean,
Yeah.
we're the lazy bums who just kind of write as we can.
And that can work. I just don't find it works for me because I get dissatisfied with what I get.
Well, even when I'm trying to like do the outline, even outlining the middle can be difficult for me because
It
I'm like,
is.
all right, we need to do this, and we need to do this here, like, but there needs to be some kind of other conflict to carry you through, to get to the end. That's why you see a lot of books with two story threads, or a lot
Yeah.
of it
Or
with two
high,
story threads.
epic fantasy with like 30 threads.
Well, yeah. But most Dresden books have at least two threads going at once. A lot of television shows have multiple threads, like multiple main characters doing completely different things. So you essentially have two episodes or two books that are just merged together that tie up in the end.
And then you have to make sure that they actually are interacting with each other because if they're completely separate, then you have the risk of caring about one and not caring about the other.
Right. Unless it's designed to be a collision course. Then you can have, as long as, then you have to write it to where you can see the lines heading towards each other in the distance.
Yeah, and I think that gets easier if they are like interacting but just from afar. Like character in story one does a thing and that down the line affects another character and they're like interacting slightly and they're gonna collide because of that. I think
Right.
is better than if they're just completely separate but they're like gonna go to the same place.
See, I just finished reading Stonewilder, which is one of the side books in the Malazan series by the other author guy. And there are 3 or 4 different storylines. And one of them, I didn't understand. It wasn't boring, but I just didn't understand how it related to the entire rest of the story. It never collided, but like it was important, but you didn't find out it was important until the very end where they explained why that entire storyline existed. But as a reader, you're following along with something that you're not really
Or you can
interested in.
cheat like our resident expert Daniel H. Wilson have like 6 individual stories that are happening in parallel with each other.
Why not? Fun.
Well, yeah, I'm just saying, like there are ways around this besides actually, doing the work.
So how do you guys actually get yourself through the middle?
I'm force of will.
I tend to flounder when I haven't planned ahead, so
So planning?
planning usually helps.
I mean, that's where. I mean, that's where I tend to leave most of my go back and do X notes. Like, probably half of my rewrites are in the middle of any book. Like, because the beginning is easy, The ending is easier, and so so the middle tends to be really light when I on my first drafts. So that's why I go back and do most of the filling.
I mean, it sounds obvious, but making sure your characters always have something they should be doing helps you. Because if you know what your character's got to do next, then there's really no reason to stop.
Right. It's the Book of Mark approach to writing.
Which is why I think I have the most trouble with Carlin's story, because there's a lot of downtime for my characters, and I don't know what to do with them.
Yeah. And also proactivity issues.
Well, that's part of it, yeah.
Yeah, because
they're
I
always
have to go
waiting
do
for things.
something, and then you get there and like I have to wait, and then hopefully you end on I have to go do something. I have to wait. Like you had issues with that story.
Yes, the first draft was rough.
Now, if you could work in a joke about how it always seems like it's hurry up and wait for the main character, then it could be pretty funny. Like this internal running I don't know, like your tense voice first or third or whatever, but this internal running monologue of, oh, son of a bitch, having to wait again, like him getting stuck in traffic, like every time he like goes to leave somewhere, he gets stuck in traffic or something.
I did enjoy the snub and changes when he mentions it sounds like this plot of a bad book.
Right. Or in Rick and Morty, where they're like, no, if this were, a story, they would have cut out the stair walking part.
Which is a very good piece of advice, I think, because I don't like the travel. It's where I've stopped in a few books. It's just like I don't like traveling and being described this thing and nothing is actually happening of importance. Nothing is actually changing.
Did you ever make it through Eye of the World? Did you read
Eye of the
Time?
World. Eye of the World I made it through, but that's where I stopped.
Because that book was them walking to a lot of places.
Yeah. And then I realized like it's gonna be more walking and more characters.
Yeah.
And more
I mean, I find it interesting. I love the series, but yeah, there's a lot of walking and riding and boat riding.
I can be okay. Like travel can be interesting, but you have to be talking about things where things are happening.
Mm-hmm.
When it's just travel for the sake of travel.
Right.
Which is what happened in the Assassin's Apprentice books. It's like I can't.
Oh my god! Did you finish the series? I forget.
No.
The last one was 30,000 words longer than it had to be, and he did so much fucking walking.
Yeah, and that's like I can't do it.
Yeah,
nothing's happening.
My biggest complaint with that book is so much walking.
Yeah, most people are like, oh, it worked in Lord of the Rings. There's a lot of traveling in there, but that's about the journey. Even though they're traveling a lot, there's a lot going on. So it's more about like the journey to Mordor, not the travel to Mordor.
Yeah, I haven't read Lord of the Rings because I'm kind of afraid of the travel being described. And there's kind of more importance
like 300 pages before they even leave the Shire.
Right.
I mean, it's been a long time since I've read the Lord of the Rings books, but I don't ever remember a lot of traveling in the books. Like, it never seemed tedious to me.
Well, yeah, even just in the movies, they were describing, like, still in the Shire, but in the farm, and Sam's afraid of, like, going further than he's ever been. Like that kind of stuff can get really boring in a book.
Yeah, but it's Peter Jackson. I mean, come on. Peter Jackson loves to throw in filler. I mean, look at the fucking Hobbit trilogy. That's a 200-page book. There's more minutes in the movies than pages in the book.
And, like, I thought the Lord of the Rings movies were really well done for the amount of source material he had to work with. You didn't have to do the same thing with The Hobbit.
Right, but each book had, granted, they were long movies, but
I never saw them,
Lord of the Rings books are not small books.
No. And to pare it down as much as he did while still remaining relatively true to the story is well done. The Hobbit, the love story, yeah. That's taking what could have been a nice, quick middle to get you from point A to point B enjoyably, and then just stretching it out way too far.
Yeah, so the point of, I guess, this tangent is still slightly on topic, is In the middle is where you're going to lose a lot of people if you do it badly.
Don't make it longer than you have to.
Yeah, and don't make it full of filler that they recognize as unimportant or that you can't keep engaging, at least.
I swear that's Epic Fantasy's biggest problem is this determination that books have to be this long, so there has to be this much in the middle.
Yeah, and probably things that irritate people and make them stop is also the bad romances that, like, this is going to take up space, this is going to be activity, probably very annoying activity, and therefore it just kind of, meh. Meh. That's the sound effect.
Yeah, that's probably one reason I'm not like super into like big time fantasy. There's just too much crap in it. Yeah, we were talking. The first Lord of the Rings book was about 500 pages. So yeah, 300 or 3 hour movie.
Was?
Not yeah. I mean that's a pretty good sized book. You know, it's what about 150,000 words, give or take.
Yeah, that's a decent sized fantasy novel.
I've been too much Epic Fantasy.
Decent.
Decent sized.
Man, I feel like a scrub here. I'm like, man, 300 pages. It's about time to wrap this fucker up.
I was just going to say I finished reading Stonewielder, which was like 630 pages, and I'm like, wow, that was a quick read.
Yeah.
And then you get into like Game of Thrones or whatever, which are unbelievably long.
That is a lot of filler.
Yeah.
So how do you avoid the filler problem?
Don't introduce more plot lines than you need.
Cut out the bullshit that is unneeded.
Skip the romance. No one's interested.
Some romances can be fun, especially when they cause actual conflict. Those are
not because people are being stupid.
Exactly.
Like Susan Rodriguez makes sense because it develops so many other storylines.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
also
essentially
very organically.
Is the storyline.
Yeah.
Susan is the catalyst for the storyline for the first 12 books of that series, essentially.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
It's the predication of the entire war.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then there's changes and dealing with the aftermath of changes.
Right.
So that gets you through 13 books.
Well, 14 is also affected by that because of the deals he made in changes.
Though the the war didn't start till book 3.
Yeah, but then, he had to get to the point of realizing he loved her, which was hard for him.
But yes, that was a romance that was important. And
at one point in Grave Peril, he said, I've never said I loved someone that I didn't lose. And it's still true. He said he loved her and he lost her. He's not said it to Murphy yet.
One day he will, and then it'll all go sideways.
Yeah.
At some point, I sort of expect Murphy to become immortal. Something like that.
I mean, she's...
The Valkyrie option is really fun.
Thank you. Trying to say.
But, okay.
So...
This isn't Justin.
Right.
Romances can work, but don't pigeonhole a romance in because you feel like it should be there. That's just going to drag out the story.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, building in real conflict is a good thing. Like, so a lot of times when I'm outlining and planning, I'm trying to figure out how to make more lines of conflict, because that's basically more plot lines, but with direct things that need to happen or are happening. So, like, either characters are being stuck into new positions that are bad, or something like catastrophic will happen. Like, if you have like a natural disaster that's just gonna like shove it in there, it can be kind of shoehorned, but it will cause problems. Make real problems that they have to deal with, not fake problems out of people's stupidity.
I've had some books that are basically just the entire story of how everyone keeps making the wrong choices. They can still be entertaining.
Only if everyone gets to die in horrible deaths. It's like, at some point, you need to strangle people.
Fair enough. So what else can you do to make sure the middle doesn't get boring?
Well, since every story starts in the middle, there's no story except for like Genesis that, starts with literally in the beginning. That doesn't start somewhere a part of some story, right? Star Wars starts with the rebellion and, Dresden, there's a lot of stuff that he talks about before. So maybe you can, like, in that Act 2, you can introduce some story threads early that kind of get resolved in the middle, then you can go to your ending.
Yeah, there could be things like that. There's also like um, putting the entry point of the story as late as possible so that you have the least amount of distance to get from beginning to end.
Like you say, you're already in the middle, but like you really should start your novel right before you're at the middle,
Yeah, yeah.
because there's no reason for anything to be forward.
You don't need, down periods of like exposition. Essentially, you can just like right in the middle of all conflict, deal with everything, get to the end. And that can be a way of making it nicer, also cutting down on the word count. Hopefully.
Right. Again, y'all with y'all's ability to have extra words. Another thing. Oh crap! I just lost my. Oh wait. Shit. I had this great epiphany and then I lost it. But keep going. I'll get back to it eventually.
Okay. Basically, it seems like in the middle you need some sort of sense of progression
Right.
in some various ways. That's why the tri-fail cycles can work because you try and you fail, you try again, you get a little bit better, but still not great, and then you like maybe do a third one and maybe don't go more than that because you'll piss people off probably. And if you actually succeed, you have like the training montage and stuff like that.
It's always fun to give your
Progress.
readers hope and then dash it. Of course, most readers should be smart enough to know that you're on page 200 out of a 400-page book and know this plan is obviously not going to work.
Yeah, that's actually one of the things that I stopped in the Assassin's Apprentice book because it was getting interesting. He was at like a party and he was just about to like attack and kill Regal, and I was like, I'm at page 200 out of 500. This isn't going to work, and it's going to be another 300 pages of travel. No,
Or
just
what you
no.
do, if you're going to do something like that, you actually let him succeed or she succeed, and then just have the entire back half be like
Running
another.
away.
Huh?
The running away.
The
trying to
running
get-
away, trying to survive, yeah. Or, the fallout of the consequences.
So kind of what George R. R. Martin did. It's like,
Yeah.
this is the main character, and the book's only like 3/4 over. He's not. Oh, yes, he's
Oh.
dead.
And then he did that again, and then again.
Though Rob never had a viewpoint, so that
That's
should be a
true.
key.
Well, then there's other characters. They don't have viewpoints until book 4. Because why not?
And then there's characters that don't exist until book 5, and then don't need to be in the story at all.
Yeah. It's a really good idea to cut out everything that isn't necessary because you're just taxing the reader,
Yeah.
which is something that a lot of people end up having too much filler, too many like, oh, this was totally going to be a thing, and then it's like it's not going to go anywhere. You should just cut it out. If there's an aspect of it want to keep, maybe put it into a different storyline, a different conflict, or a different character. A lot of times when I see people going through their editing process, they talk about this character was kind of unnecessary but fun, and that character was kind of necessary but boring, and it combined the two of them to make one interesting, necessary character. And then like consolidating the plot lines to make a lot of small plot lines into a bigger, importanter plot line. I hope people can follow this.
If you're bored with your character, your readers are bored with your character.
Probably, because the way you treat them is going to be noticeable.
Yeah, if you don't like your character, you're not going to write interesting things with that character.
Or, I mean, alternatively, you could just hate your character and do terrible things to them, and they can enjoy that.
Yeah.
Sorry, I got dropped there.
Kill your characters.
Yeah.
So when you think about like a world building specific like side quest to get you through the middle, like something that like takes you through the world a little bit more just to like introduce the reader to it a bit, get them more involved.
But it's got to have a point still.
Yeah, I think that can work, for example, if you don't know, or the reader doesn't know either what the ending is going to be or how they're going to get there. So it's still like you need to travel through the world to get to the position that will enable them to start the ending.
Right.
Like, for example, literal traveling or getting more power, more position, something like that.
Right. Well, I mean, I was kind of thinking about a good example of it was like the Death Star scene in A New Hope, which is really sort of Act Two there. And so you learn a lot about the Empire, about Vader, that kind of thing, about the abilities of the space station, the fact that there's people living there. And so there's this big world building section in the middle that gets them from, Tatooine to Yavin 4.
And also explains the stakes of everything.
Right. And
Like,
how they ended up finding where Yavin is to create the tension for the end.
yeah. And then there's the, like, one or two lines where they talk about how the emperors dissolved the Senate and stuff.
Oh, that's
And
at
it's
the
like,
very beginning.
is that the very beginning?
Yeah, that's
I thought that was when they were standing all in the conference room on the Death Star.
well, yeah, but that's when after they've captured Princess Leia, so it might be middle-ish. It's earlier than what I was
Okay.
talking about.
But, like, it's a couple words, but it does so much world building in 10 seconds of talking
Right.
without having to show you everything.
Yeah, see, it's efficient, and that's why it makes it more interesting. Being efficient with how much words it takes to get something across can make things more interesting because you're not letting it be boring.
Right. And this is a good example of starting too soon. So in Star Wars, they have this 10-second or whatever 10-word thing of, the Emperor has dissolved the Senate. And then you realize that George Lucas spent 3 movies showing you how the Senate gets dissolved, and they're terrible.
Uh, and then we don't even need to talk about Last Jedi.
Yeah, that thing was terrible. Oh, so bad.
It's been a month, so we can spoil things. Finn's story is the perfect example of what not to do in the middle. We have a
Because
character.
it was meaningless.
What do we do with him? I don't know. Like,
With
that's
a-
how
a-
you do world building quests badly.
Terrible romance, stupid characters acting stupid for stupid reasons, and everything being pointless and progress
don't-
just meaningless.
I still don't understand the concept of they're cloaked. We ran a decloaking and found them. What the hell is the point of cloaking? But yes, that storyline was boring, gaudy, and just very, very, very poorly done.
Yeah, and they had that whole
don't do
bit
that.
on the casino planet or whatever, and
Yes,
what's
that
going on here?
Like, oh, and okay, the kid's a Jedi and Hope, and I don't know, it was just boring.
Yeah, I mean that
Meaningless.
movie suffered from middle movie syndrome.
Yeah.
Like even if you're writing a trilogy, your second book can't be all middle. Because you see that all the
It's
time.
still a novel. It's still one story.
Right. But it's got to be the middle, but also not, you know.
There still needs to be a end goal that is reached.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, obvious example is Dresden, that there's going to be at least 23 books, right? But each individual book is not just middle.
Mm. Well, and there was, the whole story arc in like Empire about, because that was a full story arc. Yes, pacing was a bit wonky, but there was a obvious beginning, middle, tension. Is Luke going to turn to the dark side? Yes or no, kind of thing. And then sort of the resolve, but that also looks forward to the next movie of,
Yeah.
hey, we're going to go get these bastards or whatever.
Like, Luke wants to save his friends. He's semi-successful. And now he's got to go save the rest of them.
Right. But it also builds with Han being frozen and, him knowing. No, he doesn't. find out until Jedi that Leia's his sister.
Yeah,
But
but that's kind of where they also hinted at it.
mm,
And I guess kind of the important thing is that it's the middle. It's like the second act, so they end at a bad point. They have the obvious thing of
right.
what they're trying to resolve.
But even the second act had 3 acts in it, you know.
Yeah, they just end badly. So I mean, I guess if you think of like the tension as a line throughout a storyline, is that it's perfectly okay for the middle to just get worse and worse and worse, and then try to make it all better at the end.
Yeah, there's actually a graph for that, and I've been trying to remember it this entire time. I remember seeing it somewhere about how in a 3 act structure, how the pacing and things should go, and it's a very much most of the second act is supposed to be a dip, and the third act is a big swing up. So it's like first act is swing up, second is swing down, and third is swing back up.
Yeah,
Like
I
I
mean,
know where I saw it, I'm just cannot for the
I
life of
actually
me.
think it's on Trello. Scroll down. Because I think you posted it a long, long time ago.
Maybe I did.
Yeah, but if you put it as a graph, then you can just, you can have its happy beginning and then worse middle and then a happy ending, or you can everything gets worse and has everything's like a downward line, or you can kind of go upwards and then be happy things or anything in between. But if it's predictable or like you can see the pattern of it starts at an okay point and then it gets worse, then the obvious thing towards the end that the reader's expecting is things to get better. And conversely, with things get really good in the middle, you're also expecting things to get worse at the end. And if everything's a mix of the two, like if you have multiple plot lines and some are getting worse and some are getting better, that's probably the best, in my humble opinion.
Oh, come on, you like things start bad, things get worse, and then they end bad.
There
And then
has to
used to
be
have good
some happy
characters.
points in order to make the worst points worse, you know? Like,
And now that I'm thinking about it, Empire really doesn't have any too many upbeat up moments.
It does not.
Like even the training sequences are not the cheeriest of scenes.
but I mean, it's okay for things to have happy moments. It's okay for things to have lulls. It just, you have to balance how much that is. Because if you do too much back to back, then you kind of have this exhaustion state for the reader. And it's okay to have a lull to let them prepare for the next part.
Right. And a good example of sort of that exhaustive state is Mad Max Fury Road. Like that thing is 100 miles an hour the whole time, and by the end of it, you're just tired.
But there are points when they're just in the truck and traveling where things get slow for a little bit.
Sure.
They're just trying to get to the end. Like there's a couple moments where like pretty much everyone's asleep and it's just Max and Furiosa chatting for a minute about heavy things, but still they're just chatting. They're not being attacked yet.
Pacing doesn't mean that you have to have the gas pressed the entire time.
Yes, it's okay to let them prepare for the next time where they have to accelerate to 100.
I mean, characters need to deal with things too, and if they're not, then they're not
Yeah.
realistic.
Yeah, there's I just remember watching Jim Butcher actually talk about writing, and he was saying that the like scene sequel kind of structure to it of like you have something happening, you have the characters dealing with the aftermath, and then they immediately goes into another thing happening, dealing with the aftermath. And his best example was A New Hope, because like there's the Death Star stuff, and then there's dealing with after the Death Star and Obi-Wan's dead, and then there's immediately they're getting attacked again, and then they're dealing with that. Did I lose you guys?
No, we're
No,
here.
I'm
Sorry.
thinking.
I'm still trying to find the one thing I actually wanted to post because what I posted on Trello a long time ago wasn't exactly what I was looking for.
Mm.
But
It does have the graphs though.
yeah.
And that's definitely one thing Butcher does well. There
Themes
tends
and
to be
sequels.
very heavy moments after the action.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot of times when you're in an emergency, you're not really processing what's happening, and then you actually like get more scared afterwards, more freaked out when you're actually processing the emotions. Same thing happens to readers and characters. Which is why after Changes we had an entire book of the sequel.
Yeah.
What a minor actual plotline.
Hey, some of those plot lines were important.
True.
How do we get Harry back from the dead? Ah, here we are.
It's one thing that all these graphs that kind of don't really describe is like moral ambiguity. For example, I started watching the show The Fall on Netflix. It's got Gillian Anderson in it and that guy from 50 Shades of Grey, and it's really, really good. But for some reason, I can never figure out if I want the good guy to win, the bad guy to win. It's like it's impossible for you to know what I want to happen. I'm just kind of sitting there watching it. Like, because like they show him, the bad guy, as being a really messed up person, but I still get pissed off when his life is falling apart. It's like I can't explain it, and I don't know if that's really being shown on any form of graph, because like, am I supposed to be happy that his life is falling apart instead of pissed off, or what?
I think it's a sign of a good character, right? Like, even though he's the bad guy, you're still invested in him.
Yes, it was a very, very well done show. I highly recommend it. Fucking hate that teenager, though. If you watch the show, you'll get it. The teenager's fucking terrible in a good way. Like, I'd happily strangle her. Okay.
And that's how you're supposed to feel?
I think so. Because no matter what, no matter everything that she did has to be kind of viewed as like, why the fuck would you do that? You're a terrible person. But you're just being terrible to a terrible person as well. Right?
You don't know how to feel.
It was great. I don't know. It was a good story. And there's one thing that it did, is that it tied up. It had 3 seasons and it ended where it was supposed to. It didn't try to prolong it, which is something that I think a lot of series can fall into, is that they keep having the middle extending and extending and extending, and there is no ending, which a lot of TV shows fall into, but several book series I know of also did as well.
That's, well, especially in terms of TV, that's a big difference between how British and American television runs, where most British television is like, look, we're going to do this number of episodes, period. Where the US is, hey, if it's a hit, we're going to keep you going for as long as possible.
Thank God for things like Netflix now. They can just make the shows they want to make and be done with it.
Yeah, that's one thing I'm really happy with Netflix lately, is that no, it's done. Stop it. And they went with that.
Why do they need to bring The Office back?
Because, well...
Why did they need to go 9 seasons in the first place? But
well, yeah. Well, one thing I've read is they're having... Hollywood in general is having a hard time putting out shows that last a long time now. It seemed like every show used to go like 7 or 8 years all the time, but now they don't. So they're having syndication issues, and that's where like the bread and butter is for most television shows. So that's why they milk these shows for as long as humanly possible now.
Which is how you get the middle syndrome.
Yeah. Is that the actual name for it? Because it should be.
I don't know.
It is now, motherfucker.
Yes. That should be
that desperate desire to make it keep going. It's okay for your book to be 100,000 words if that's how long it took to get there.
Right, and that's something that it took me a while to get to, but it's you know what, just let it end. So what, you miss your word mark by 5 or 10,000 words. It's better than trying to throw in 10,000 words of filler.
Yeah, because it's noticeable when things are filler, and people don't like it.
Wheel of Time had that. There's a couple books in the middle that are infamous for being like, why is this still going?
And I'm sure that people who don't plan can write good books or series or whatever, but I feel like if you have the plan, like this is the story from start to finish, and maybe you need to expand a little bit in the middle, but you still have the progression of getting to the ending where it's going to stop.
Yeah, the
It
last one that Jordan wrote was really good because it started to show all the signs of this is starting to wrap up. We're heading towards the end game now. It's like, okay, this is much more entertaining now that we know we're
yeah,
getting to where we want to go.
the sense of progression is really needed. You can have diversions, especially in like a mystery thing of like, oh, that was really promising. Turns out that he's not actually the bad guy. We have to go start again, try another route. That can happen. It can be fine. The sense of progression is needed, though.
Right. It's even though it's a red herring, it needs to be, on the checklist.
Yeah,
The
and
Because
character probably learned something from it.
they're a suspect. So,
yeah, it's still an avenue that needs to be, you know, run down. Things like that. It's just if you're never ending. I have actually stopped reading series that I really enjoyed because I knew that nothing was really going to change. There's like some minor, almost cosmetic change would happen at the end, and then the next book would be the same thing. It's the same formula, and I just couldn't do it anymore. And I feel like this happens more often in some genres than others. Like it happens in TV shows a lot, but I notice it in urban fantasy more than anything else that I read.
I don't read a lot of urban fantasy.
Mm. I'm pretty sure this is one of the things that was terrible about the Anita Blake series. Granted, there's a lot of terribleness about that. Because like there would just be a cosmetic change essentially at the end, and the middle was just a bunch of orgies instead of anything having to do with the plot.
I forgot how much you've ranted about that series.
I didn't even read it. I couldn't get through the first book, but when I was reading what other people are saying about it, it's like, how would you think that that's a good idea to do as an author?
hey, it's sold, right? If it sells, it's a good idea.
Eh.
I mean, you look at Song of
Aren't
Ice and
people
Fire.
eating Tide Pods recently?
Yes, that is a thing.
Which
Some
goes to
grocery
show
stores are
you.
putting them in like plastic containers, like Blu-rays or something, where they like take it off.
People are stupid. They'll read anything. Listen to us if you want to feel good about what you're writing.
Yeah.
But
We're trying
readers
to
will
help you
read
write
anything.
quality.
I was going to say, like,
Hey,
when you're doing a series, like, don't. You take a Song of Ice and Fire where he's introducing what are either complete red herrings or major plot lines in book 5 out of a 7-book series. You really should have already reached your maximum quota of what's going on by then.
It's okay for books to go 10, 15, 20 series longs. That's fine. Just have something to make the middle progressive and interesting, like Dresden. There's not many series like Dresden that I can think of.
No, he's very, very, very good at keeping everything neat and tidy
Yeah. And interesting and
and interesting.
like progressing.
Yeah. Now that I'm doing a reread, I'm amazed at how many things that he actually introduced as early as he did that are relevant throughout.
Yeah, which is his planning allows us to have the Justin Files podcast because there's enough things to try to dissect.
Where George R. Martin's word vomit lets people talk about it infinitely, not knowing if any of it's actually
Relevant.
meaningful.
Yeah.
like, oh, and it's just then you have like the betting pools of who's gonna die next.
Yeah.
And then there's the night lamp theory.
Night lamp?
It's Stannis is going to lead Ramsay's forces out onto a lake using a tower as a false beacon to lead them out onto the ice and trap them.
Right, because Stannis isn't dead yet.
But it like draws its evidence from like a few throwaway lines and some general geography that was established, and it's like we just need another book because there's so much time that anyone in a book series that's as wordy as that one is, you can really make any theory and justify it with actual textual evidence.
Yeah.
it's the first Game of Thrones and first Harry Potter came out within 6 months of each other.
And she did 7 books
Whereas, when did
and stopped.
Stormfront come out?
Right around 2000.
Yeah, I think so. It's like 2000, 2002, somewhere in that range.
And Malizin's like 12 years, I think. 99 to 2011. He put out 10 full-size books and a couple dozen
Full
small
size
books.
meaning like 200,000 words or something like that.
Damn.
2 to 350, 392. Holy shit! Yeah.
So Dresden Files, Stormfront, April 1, 2000.
And we've got
2000.
15 books and 2 side books.
Yeah. Which Briefcases is coming out in June. I'm so excited.
For your podcast.
Yeah, because we'll have new content.
Yeah, I currently have Guardian Angels and Other Monsters by Daniel H. Wilson on pre-order.
Oh, nice.
Comes out in March. Yeah, it's just got like stuff from like Robopocalypse and Clockwork Origins. I'm like, all right, new stories.
This is what happens when you know how to plan the middle.
Yeah.
You can finish things.
Get through them. And then like on the other side, you could run into Sanderson, and he writes so much that he just refuses to edit. He hates it.
The only person who could possibly write the third book in a trilogy as warm up to the second book in the trilogy, and then just go, oh, hey, here they are.
Is that the order he did it?
Yeah, that's what I read, that he had written, the third book in the Wax and Wayne series? Shadows of Self, I think. He started writing that to get himself in the mindset for the second book. I don't know. Then just finished it, and then went back and did the second one and said to his publisher, I've got both of them.
I had thought that I thought I read a long time ago, but only once, just like him saying, so I started writing this book. It took a little while, but I'm really excited about it. P.S. I wrote the next book too. And it's just like, I thought he did them in order, but if he did them backwards, that's also pretty interesting.
I think that's what I read, that he kind of... I don't know why you would start writing the third book to get you back in the mindset for the second book.
I mean...
But this is Sanderson.
Maybe he knew where he wanted to go, but didn't know how to get there.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So he just started writing it and started filling in, like, all the stuff that needed to happen in the third one. So he's like, oh, well, now I have my outline for the second one. All the things that need to happen.
I feel like if I did that, I would end up writing the second book instead of the third book. You know, just like I'd progress with where I left off at. I don't think I could write out of order.
mean, if you know where you're going, it really makes the middle easy, because it has to go this way.
I just don't think that my brain can work writing out of order.
Don't think most people's brains can work the way Sanderson's does.
That's a good point.
It depends on the structure if I can do it out of order or not.
I feel like you're really possibly handicapping what your second book could be.
Yes.
But if you're Sanderson, where your ideas are like already completely crystallized in your head, I don't even know if he outlines. I think he just instantly knows the entire story.
He has some amount of an outline. He talks about it in his lectures. Okay. He has the events outlined, but then he discovery writes his characters, which will sometimes lead to him changing his outline.
Then how the hell can he write his third book first?
Exactly. And that's just what I remember him saying, but I also don't understand how you discover write characters, because I have to have that figured out first. I need to know before I can let things go and run free.
His website has a section under the books tab called Where Do I Start?
Yeah.
I have never seen that on a writer's page.
No, that makes sense.
It makes sense. It's just, what?
There's one thing about, like, the Vlad Tolstoy series by Stephen Bruce. He wrote that series out of order just based on whatever he wants, but he knows where in time they all happen and keeps track of that. And once in a while, he has a book that's in multiple different parts of the storyline. Interesting shit.
Like, that's what I have with, I think it's the Witcher series. It's hard to know where to start because I don't think he wrote them in chronological order. So, like, if you read it chronologically, you're not reading it in publication order
Yeah.
whatsoever.
And in situations like that, as a reader, I suggest doing it in order of publication because
Yeah.
that's the order that he explained the concepts,
True.
Mm,
which is what I suggest, at least for the first time going through the Vlad Tolcho series.
right.
Because he's
Is
going to
there
explain the magic system in book 1, even though it's chronologically book 5.
for the Narnia books, you can get them in like some of them will come like completely bound, like every book together, because they're not all that long, and you can get two versions, chronological or publication date, and they're really different. Like
Publication date, at least
yeah,
at
books
first.
like books 4 and 5 are really like for books 1 and 2 if you go by like chronologically in the in the in universe calendar.
One of my favorite pastimes when I was younger was to do rereads of the Redwall series in publication order and then chronological order because those are wildly different.
Which I feel like this doesn't really apply to things, or like, it doesn't apply as much for people like, say, Sanderson, where they have the slant world or slant universe. It's like you can read Mistborn out of order, or not Mistborn the series, but you can like do Mistborn and then Stormlight and then Elantris because they're mildly connected, but not directly so.
Yeah, I feel like Stormlight's the one that is gonna sort of expand the universe because all the other ones relate to each other, but Mistborn's the or Stormlight seems to be the one that's going to
Yeah,
resolve
interconnect things.
some of the.
Mhm.
But for Sanderson, I suggest going in order publication because then, as
Yeah.
you're reading, he'll get better as a writer, and then you won't go backwards and then be disappointed in his writing ability because he didn't like editing.
No one
Yeah, and
does.
if you're going to listen to the Dresden Files, start at the beginning because if you start in the middle, where Marsters is a much better reader than he is at the beginning. Even though I loved how I read Stormfront, I know a lot of people hate it, but I loved it.
No, it's still pretty good because he did the character pretty well. It's just they got more funding
Oh yeah,
somewhere around book 4.
yeah, because
I think
he had put out 3 bestsellers, and so
Yeah, it's
you,
like, okay, we're
you
actually going to care about this.
and somewhere around there they switched to a just like Penguin or Random House or something like that.
Mm.
Like he gets picked up by a bigger publisher.
how did they get Marsters to begin with?
Luck? I don't know.
Was that before Buffy? Was that before he was
That
in
can't
Buffy?
have.
God no,
I thought Buffy is older than that.
it is.
I thought Buffy was in the 2000s. I know it was in the 2000s. But
Buffy started in '97. Is that what this is?
Really?
'97 to 2001.
So he was already established.
well, maybe he was bored. Maybe he really liked the book. Was like, hey,
Yeah, maybe. Whatever it is, we lucked out. But do we have more to say about the middle? Because I think we're avoiding it again.
it's I don't know, man.
You just got to do it.
It's almost preferable to just have the beginning and the end and squish them together than it is to have a bad middle.
Well, I think one of the keys to writing a good middle is to make sure your reader doesn't think I'm sitting in the middle here reading the middle.
Well, yeah, but even I think I would disagree with that statement because, even the middle, like, you're building towards the end, but you're not there yet. Because a good middle answers the question of how does the person get there, or how does the team, or whatever. I don't know, maybe it's just because I watch way too many movies and TV and stuff and read books and crap, but like, it's you can feel it. You're like, okay, we're through the first act. Let's see how they bridge and then, finish up.
I feel like if you're thinking that, the reader doesn't have enough of your attention.
So if the reader can recognize the first and second, third act while reading, not a
I
very
don't know
good
if that's
second
a
act.
good thing.
Yeah, It's maybe one of the reasons I don't like the 3-act structure, or at least as a concept of, I don't find it helpful because I don't want it to be apparent.
I don't know. If for me, it's like when they get to that point where it's obvious that it's time for the journey to begin or whatever. It's a good story. You get excited about the journey or the middle. Okay, obviously they're going to have to fight the Empire at the end, but getting there should be an exciting proposition, not just waiting to get there.
Yes. Yeah, the middle it still has proactivity, progression, things that are engaging and things that are like going up and down in terms of conflict and resolutions and all of that. And in order to basically have the less of the middle as possible, having the beginning as late as possible, so you have less middle time, I think is a good idea for a lot of people.
And I think and I'm guilty of this, that's why I'm bringing it up, but another thing that is something you can do is you don't have to put all the character world building in the first 100 pages.
It's okay for people to be confused. It really is.
Right. And so, that's something like I want everyone to understand who this person is right away. But if you look at a lot of the really great characters, they don't really develop. They're not really fully developed until they get to the end. Like Han Solo, we know he's a smuggler. He's a terrible person who doesn't pay his debts to Jabba, and then, we don't see his true form as, loyal to his friends and everything else until the very end of A New Hope. So, you're learning about this character all the way through the entire movie, and you also see that with a lot of book. Well, you don't see that happen a lot, but you should see it more and you should do it more.
It's harder to pull off in books.
It's harder to pull off in books. But, that's my issues. I just like, all right, let's do everything all at the beginning and then story. And I'm like, no.
I mean, it's nice
That's called
to
an
see.
info dump.
Yeah, I know. And I'm like, I can't tell you how many things I've just like either put into like different folders or whatever. Granted, I've started using this online software that's sort of like Scrivener Lite, but free and on the internet. And so now I can like they have scenes that are movable and stuff, and that's been helpful. But I'm so bad about just wanting to put everything in there right away. That's something I just fight hard against. Like, it is just bad for me. I've gotten a lot better, but I still struggle. Hashtag struggle is real. Hashtag 2018 resolutions, whatever.
I was going to say, characters overcoming character flaws tends to be a good thing.
Right. It's the true metal, right? It shows their true metal when they overcome a flaw and how they overcome it. It's not just they overcame, it's how they came. What's the plural on that? Nemesis? No Mystery Men fans out there? Oh, sad.
I'm sure there's people laughing as they listen.
Yeah.
I hope
sure
so.
Well, if you had to sum up all of this advice that we've given, how would you do it?
Just don't suck. That's pretty much how all of our advice is.
I was going to say just do it well.
Yeah. Don't suck.
Because as we always say, you can do anything you want as long as you do it well. Your book could be all middle, and if you do it well, it'll work. I've never seen it done well.
I feel like the key to the middle is to just always keep it relevant.
Yeah.
Don't go off on tangents that you don't need to.
You always need to be looking towards the horizon in the middle. Like, the horizon is always in the distance, but you should always be looking at it.
There can be as many obstacles in the way of getting to the end as long as you're always heading towards the end.
And you can get lost in those obstacles, but you have to come up every once in a while and, see where you're going and how it relates.
Yeah, don't suck.
Good advice.
Okay. Okay, you can find us at brokenjars.xyz, on Patreon at patreon.com/brokenjars. We have all sorts of cool rewards and things. This is something we should also do at the very beginning of the show instead of the end, because no one ever listens to the end
Meh.
of a podcast.
That's why I don't want to do it in the beginning. It's like, I don't want to force people to listen to this.
You can find me on Twitter at Jacob Ingles. I think High Fantasy has a Twitter. That never happens.
Yeah, once in a while I think about it, and not much happens.
I think I know I'm on Instagram, but I think it's either at Prairie Penguin or at Prairie_Penguin. If you want to see my Insta, which is just generally a lot of guinea pigs. So yeah.
Podcast. How's the podcast going?
You can find Director Alex on the Dresden Files podcast. You can't find Colin anywhere else because he's a lazy bastard. You can find me on the Great Scott podcast if you would like to, check out The Office. And we just finished up season 6, so we're going into season 7. So we have a big back catalog if you want to check out all of our, if you want to check out the good seasons of The Office.
Yeah, now you're
You can email us at brokenjarsbroadcasting@gmail.com. So thanks for coming out. If you would like a topic, we're more than happy to take submissions. We would love to hear, we would love to not have to think of a topic.
Yeah.
I kid you not, listeners. Every week we're like, okay, we need to figure out our next topic so we can tell the listeners what to look forward to, and we never do.
I mean, if we're due in the middle, we could try to think about the end, but I have very little experience about it because I get stuck in the middle.
I mean, we can just talk about endings that are great.
And endings that suck. Yeah,
and endings that suck.
Do another bitching episode, essentially.
Some of us have positive things to say.
Yeah. Well, yeah. There's endings that are good, there's endings that are bad, and there's endings that are weird, right?
There's endings that just went somewhere completely unexpected.
And then there's books that won't end, like fucking the last 4 Harry Potter books. Just shut the fuck up already. But that's another show. So thanks for coming out. We will see all of y'all next time.
Hopefully in 2 weeks.
In 2 weeks. Bye.